There's nothing worse for an F1 driver than starting a new season in trouble, and several of the best are going into 2026 with some big issues to resolve. Whether it's battling the blatant woes of a team in crisis, high expectations just not being met, or a more existential dilemma like a career at a crossroads, the competitive reality of F1 can't be denied for long. New rules and a new season wipe the slate clean in a way, but they also bring a lot of new challenges and revive old worries, even for some of F1's top drivers. And in particular, Fernando Alonso. There's something cruelly ironic about the possibility that the end of Alonso's F1 career could be undermined by the same core factor that set him back more than a decade ago: Honda. After spending 2 decades waiting for the chance to drive an Adrian Newey-designed F1 car, Alonso heads into 2026 not even certain he'll have a realistic shot at finishing the first race. The Aston Martin package looks compromised, short on performance and carrying reliability concerns, and at best, Alonso begins the year hoping for a rapid rate of development simply to reach midfield competitiveness. The grand ambitions he once held for this project now hang by a thread. There's a very real risk that his faith in Aston Martin and the final truly competitive years of his F1 life are eroded by Honda's struggles. Given how painfully his McLaren reunion unfolded in 2015, that would represent a bitter final twist. All Alonso can hope for is a silver lining later on in the season, or perhaps momentum to carry into 2027 if he sticks around. But there's little doubt he enters 2026 facing one of the most challenging campaigns of his career. That will surely test his patience, and it could get fiery depending on how candid Alonso chooses to be. Lewis Hamilton. There's no driver who has more at stake in F1 this year than Lewis Hamilton. He may be under contract for 2027, but after a dire first year with Ferrari, the 41-year-old needs to turn things around. Race engineer Riccardo Adami has been replaced on an interim basis by Carlo Santi, which makes for what Hamilton calls a difficult period. Even more important is how he adapts to the new cars. Early on in the Bahrain test, he looked significantly less comfortable than Charles Leclerc. However, that improved dramatically as the 6 days of running progressed. While it's impossible to evaluate conclusively where he stands compared to Leclerc, Hamilton is certainly happier with the 2026 cars than he was with the previous generation of stiff ground effect ones. On top of that, he described himself as more connected to this Ferrari given the role he played in developing it, meaning a bit of his DNA is in the car. The improved responsiveness on turn-in and the wider mechanical setup windows mean there are promising signs that Hamilton will be able to get the car in a better window for him on corner entry. He was visibly experimenting with that in testing and refined that approach as the Ferrari improved. With Ferrari in decent shape heading into the season, even if it appears to be a small step behind Mercedes, Hamilton should have a more competitive car than 2025. But the key challenge is whether he's able to dial into it well enough to do his best work behind the wheel and match, or as he will be aiming to, get ahead of Leclerc. If the first part of this season seems too much like last year, expect there to be plenty of questions about his future from the outside world, and most importantly, in Hamilton's own mind. Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz's decision to join Williams last year rather than Sauber ahead of its Audi transformation, or Alpine ahead of its 2026 switch to Mercedes engines, looked inspired in 2025. That choice might look very different this year. Testing suggests that both teams will start the year ahead of Williams, which missed the first test in Barcelona and has a car that's overweight and lacks the poise of its rivals on track. As Sainz says, it's exposed how much ground Williams still needs to make up on F1's top teams, and he makes this list over teammate Alex Albon simply because Sainz picked Williams for his post-Ferrari career, so he's the one with a recent choice that could backfire. Williams is behind most of its midfield rivals. Haas, Alpine, Racing Bulls and Audi have all done a better job so far. It will improve, but it's probably going to be a tough start to the season. The weight reduction project will take time to get the car not just down to the weight limit, but under it, where ballast can be used to optimise the weight distribution. There are signs that a high-rake design approach is causing some problems getting into the right setup window. Sainz himself has integrated well with Williams and excelled in the second half of last year, so that's not the problem. The question is whether Williams has put itself on the back foot not just for 2026, but even beyond that. We'll get a big clue of how bad it is in Australia, and if you want the inside line on F1's biggest stories and a ton of behind-the-scenes exclusive content, the start of the season is the perfect time to check out the Race Members Club. We're running a 7-day free trial at the moment, and you can make us your F1 2026 Paddock Pass by checking out the link in the description. Oscar Piastri. Having narrowly missed out on the World Championship in 2025, Oscar Piastri would have wanted an immediate opportunity to put that right in 2026. That places him among the drivers carrying the highest expectations on the grid, but they won't immediately be met. McLaren appears set to begin 2026 on the back foot relative to the works teams, with a deficit in its understanding of the new energy management demands. Then there's a more subtle concern. The decisive factor in Piastri missing out in 2025 was a difficult late season spell where McLaren identified his struggle to extract grip and confidently attack slow corners, particularly in conditions where the car was sliding on the tyre. These new generation cars slide significantly more across the board due to reduced downforce. There's more time spent in the corners that exposed Piastri's supposed weaknesses late last year, and proportionally less advantage to be gained in high-speed sections where he's typically excelled. Piastri didn't look as immediately as comfortable as teammate Lando Norris in testing, though seemed to get better over the 2 weeks in Bahrain. It's possible he adapts quickly, but he may face a challenging start to a season in which he would have hoped to immediately return to championship contention. Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon joined Haas last year as the experienced hand, but was comprehensively upstaged by rookie teammate Ollie Bearman. As team principal Io Komatsu recently said, the Haas team expected more from Ocon, albeit with the caveat that there were times when the team couldn't give him the car balance he wanted. Ocon had his moments with a number of standout race drives, but qualifying was a challenge. At times he struggled with the braking characteristics, and Komatsu pointed to Bearman's Max Verstappen-like capacity to handle rear instability, but Ocon, like Nico Hülkenberg before him, isn't as comfortable with that. If Haas, as expected based on testing, starts the season near the front of the midfield, Ocon will have the machinery to produce good results. And he needs to, especially given there were hints in testing that Bearman once again might have the edge in terms of outright pace. Haas's form means it could be a desirable destination for 2027, and it already has ex-Alpine racer Jack Doohan on its books as reserve driver. Plus, the ever-expanding involvement of Toyota means there could be interest in one of its drivers being promoted to F1, with Ryo Hirakawa another reserve. If Ocon struggles, there could be question marks over his place with the team. Max Verstappen. This might be the most divisive inclusion on our list, but regardless of whether Red Bull has a winning car and engine, Max Verstappen sounds like someone approaching an F1 career crossroads in 2026. Red Bull seems to have produced its first ever F1 engine with a respectable performance base, great reliability, and impressive drivability, which is about as much as Verstappen could have reasonably hoped for. The problem is that it still might not be enough. If Red Bull really is only the fourth best package at the start of the season, that leaves Verstappen at the tail end of the lead group, fighting for podium scraps rather than victories. And an uncompetitive Verstappen is an unhappy Verstappen. But Verstappen has also made clear he really dislikes this new rules era, particularly the extent of energy management required. So much so that he claims even if he has a winning car, it won't matter. All of this unfolds against uncertainty about Verstappen's long-term future in F1. He's openly questioned the sprint races, the expanding calendar, the increase in street circuits, and the new rules are yet another clash between what F1 is and what Verstappen wants. That means 2026 will likely shape Verstappen's thinking about how much he's being pushed away by this version of F1. And if he does sample events like the Nürburgring 24 Hours, he'll be drawn even further to another world that's already very compelling to him. It's a luxury problem to have in a way, but a sign of the existential trouble even the best driver on the grid can face, no matter how good their car ends up being.